Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd first like to start out by thanking you for today's hearing. I believe that any discussion of energy policy must include a thorough examination of current and future technologies, and today's hearing on biofuels should give my colleagues and me the opportunity to explore the future of transportation fuels. I urge the Chairman to schedule more hearings on technologies that can help address energy independence and global warming. By creating fuel from crops and other biological materials, biofuels hold great potentials to help wean the United States from its dependence upon foreign oil and to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. While biofuels do offer some answers to both of these problems, one question is whether biofuels offer the right answers. They could very well, but at this point, the questions biofuels raise outnumber the answers. For instance, how much does the federal government need to subsidize corn-based ethanol, which seems to offer slight improvement in CO2 emissions, but also seems to put more pressure on food prices, water supply and quality, and land use? Or would it be better to make biofuels from soybeans, sugar cane, or switchgrass? In August, the Wall Street Journal reported the cultivation of a plant called jatropha, a shrub found in India that can grow in almost any climate and can potentially produce biodiesel fuel at a cost cheaper than any of the other plants I've mentioned today. Is the jatropha plant an answer? And what about the alternatives such as hydrogen fuel cells? This technology has the potential to propel cars and trucks without creating any carbon dioxide emissions. But is it better than the biofuels currently under development? And I don't know the answer to these questions, and I suspect the Congress doesn't either. This is another situation where I worry that instead of letting the markets decide which product or technology is best, the government will try to pick winners and losers. In July, this committee held a hearing on the plug-in gasoline electric hybrid car. At that time, I raised some questions, but said the free market should be free to figure this out on its own. Just yesterday, it appears that market forces are starting to produce the answer. While General Motors and Toyota intend to keep developing hybrid technology, executives from Renault, Nissan, and Honda said they see gasoline electric hybrid technology as flawed and will apparently invest in all-electric car technology instead. Fortunately, these executives made the decision without having to ask us in Congress what we think or us in Congress telling them what to do. An undercurrent of today's hearing is that the federal government should increase its mandated use of biofuels through a renewable fuel standard. Congress enacted such a standard in 2005, and witnesses today tell us that biofuel production has already exceeded the production requirements. Some will say that we need to raise the government's mandate even higher because the free market isn't responding. I am not so sure that it isn't. General Motors is aggressively advertising its fleet of flexible fuel vehicles. Both Chevron and British Petroleum are proudly highlighting their research on biofuels. The larger question is how we move from petroleum to alternative fuels without disrupting our economy. One way or another, the free market will give us an answer, and I will anxiously await the results. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Great.
Chairman, I'll start out by saying I'm not a real big fan of ethanol. Most of the counties in my congressional district in the Milwaukee suburbs are under a reformulated gas mandate. A few of them are not. And the experience that we've had is that if you use non-reformulated gas, meaning none with ethanol or gas with no ethanol in it, the mileage goes up about 10% during the summer and about 15% during the winter, so that any fuel savings through the use of reformulated gas ends up being eliminated as a result of the lower gas mileage. And by burning more fuel to get to where you're going, my constituents end up putting more particulate pollution in the air. And the result of the market working is that there are a number of entrepreneurs that have put gas stations in right across the county line in the non-reformulated gas area, and they started going from 4 pumps, and now a couple of them are up to 16 pumps because again, the market is working, even though there's not that much of a price differential. So it is a quality differential that causes my constituents to drive a few more miles to get filled outside there. I think we're getting hooked, particularly on corn-based ethanol. And I would like to first ask Mr. Endres and Mr. Gatto whether you favor a repeal of the 54-cent a gallon tariff that we put on sugar-based ethanol, which largely comes from Brazil. And if so, why? And if not, why not?
Well, first, let me address the issue.
No, I've got 5 minutes. Please answer my question. You favor the repeal?
No. The reason the 54-cent tariff is in place is to protect the taxpayer. There's a blender credit in place to incent blenders to put ethanol in fuel.
Mr. Gatto?
It's in shape. In place.
No. Again, I think, there's a misnomer that all of a sudden Brazil is this panacea. The reality in Brazil is that Brazil operates 6 months a year, and during the grind season down there, they're consuming much of the product that they're manufacturing, and that is left available for export, they do find a way to either send it here or overseas.
Okay. Now, my next question addressed to both Mr. Endres and Mr. Gatto is, do you favor a repeal of the 54-cent a gallon subsidy that we apply at the wholesale level for ethanol production?
It's 51 cents today.
Okay.
And no, I don't favor it. It's an important market driver today.
I do not as well. And again, this is one of the most important drivers to show that the United States has a commitment to the long-term success of this program.
Let me just respond with this observation. When the government puts a protective tariff on and then grants a subsidy over and above that, that might be nice when a market is starting out. The ethanol market, I think, is now well matured. And I get very, very fearful when I hear major ethanol producers saying we need both a continued subsidy and we need to have the protection that prevents sugar-based ethanol from coming into this country without a rather large tariff applied on it. This is kind of double protectionism, and the consumer ends up paying for that in the end. Now, I personally think that the subsidy that the taxpayers give to ethanol production is corporate welfare. You're a beneficiary of that corporate welfare, and the corn farmers who end up selling a lot of corn to you folks end up having a price advantage because of the tariff that we place on the import of sugar-based ethanol in Brazil. Now, if this is such a panacea, why can't we let the market work without a protective tariff and without a taxpayer subsidy? And I have 37 seconds left. Mr. Endres and Mr. Gatto.
Yes. First of all, today the ethanol industry is not receiving the blender's credit. The market is such that the oil companies are keeping that, which is in fact helping create new markets. So it is an important element to open these new markets up. Again, we don't receive the benefit of that today. The long term, I believe actually you'll see that biofuels can be produced for less than gasoline, ethanol less than a barrel of gasoline, than a gallon of gasoline.
But shouldn't we have been able to get to that point now with a tremendous emphasis on ethanol, particularly in the non-attainment areas under the Clean Air Act with the reformulated gas mandates?
Well, the biofuels development has increased more rapidly than what the RFG markets need ethanol to satisfy the action requirement.
Okay, thank you. My time is up.